Fine, if you have no motivation, step back. I was at an important competition that could determine the promotion of my boss who had always supported me. However, just when things were about to start, the computer broke down. This presentation required a speech in English. Even though everyone knew the content by heart, speaking in English without a script was a different story. While my boss frantically tried to restart the computer, saying, "I'm terribly sorry." "Just a moment, please," the person in charge stood up. Irritated. "I don't have time for a company that can't even manage a proper presentation." My boss looked dejected. This couldn't go on. Although I was considered a lazy employee, I decided to take action in this emergency. "I'll do it." I stepped up to the stage. The attendees looked at me with disbelief, but as soon as I started speaking, I captured everyone's attention. This was the moment my stagnant life began to change significantly. My name is John, 35 years old. I work for a travel agency. Our company plans package tours both domestically and internationally, with a diverse range of clients and colleagues. One of the great things about this job is that I can learn about foreign cultures while staying in the country. Despite working at such a stimulating and exciting company, I wasn't particularly ambitious. Of course, the job was enjoyable and I found it stimulating, but I was content with maintaining the status quo. My colleagues were steadily climbing the corporate ladder. Some had even become assistant managers, which was genuinely something to be happy about, though I didn't feel envious. I knew there was gossip about me, as I hadn't taken any promotion exams and stayed in my current position without caring about others' opinions. Some younger employees didn't know me well and speculated that I remained a regular employee because I was incompetent or unmotivated. Although it wasn't pleasant, it was true that I remained a regular employee. I pretended not to hear the gossip and didn't bother correcting them. Despite this, the company was meaningful to me. In April, during the period of personnel changes, new members joined our workplace from another branch. Among them, a standout was Lisa. Lisa transferred from a store in a neighboring prefecture and was an exceptionally beautiful woman and a competent superior who handled foreign clients. She treated everyone equally and was flawless in every way. She had been dispatched to our branch as a candidate for the store manager position. It seemed she was assigned here with a promotion in mind. One day, I found an error while checking documents. The hotel name and address used for a tour couldn't be found on the website. Although it was listed on the internal server, I couldn't find it. Upon checking the hotel company's website, I found that they had recently relocated. Since Lisa had created the proposal, I quietly brought the documents to her. "Lisa, about this hotel." After blinking in surprise, she searched for the same page to confirm. "You're right. Thanks for noticing." "No problem, I'll update the internal list later." "Please do." "Now, what should we do about the replacement hotel?" "The new location is too far." "How about this one?" She opened the website of another hotel and showed it to me. As we looked at the computer together, I pointed out a detail that caught my eye. This place might not fit the tour concept. The luxury focus seems a bit too much. "You're right." "Then, how about this one? This hotel seems good. They also have a 3-month discount campaign, and it'll be a plus." "You're right, thanks for noticing." Lisa paused and turned to me. With an even more surprised expression, she tilted her head. "John, were you just having a normal conversation with me?" "Huh?" "Yes. Were you following my explanation?" I nodded honestly, not remembering discussing anything particularly difficult. It was just a hotel search. But all the websites were in the local language, right? "Yes. And yet you understood them and noticed various things." "It's just part of the job." I somewhat understood what Lisa was getting at. These days, few people are excessively praised for reading English websites fluently, especially in a travel agency like ours. However, all the websites we were looking at were in French. "So, you can read French, John?" "I majored in it in college, but I can only read it." "It's nothing special." "Really?" This website had quite a few tricky expressions, though. "You can read it too, right?" "Anyway, how should we revise the proposal?" "Should I handle it?" "Oh, yes. Could you please?" Got it. I bowed and quickly returned to my desk. Lisa seemed like she was about to say something but was approached by another employee, so she couldn't pursue it further. Later, our branch decided to participate in a competition. In this company, not only does the headquarters management participate in competitions, but branch employees can also submit and pitch their plans. Lisa was chosen to lead the project for our branch. Naturally, it would significantly impact her career advancement. I was included in the project team. Probably because my ability to read French had been revealed during our previous interaction. I didn't think I would be much help, but requesting to be removed from the team would only make me stand out negatively. Since this competition wasn't about a tour in France, I didn't expect to have major tasks. I resigned myself to attending the internal meetings for the competition. One day, there was a business trip related to the competition. Since Lisa was still suspicious of me, she had me accompany her. Reluctantly arriving at the client's company's waiting room, I encountered a familiar face in the lobby. "Hey, John, is that you?" "Chris." The man in a luxurious suit was a senior colleague from my previous job at a rival company. Chris greeted Lisa and me with a smile. "What a coincidence, are you here for sales too, John?" "Yes." "I'm glad to see you're doing well." "Yeah, but it was tough after you left, you know?" "Ah. Not blaming you or anything. You were a big help, John." "Are things going well at your current job?" "Yes, thanks to you." "Good to hear. If you ever need anything, you're always welcome to come back. Everyone would be happy to have you." "Thank you." Trying not to let my face twitch, I gave a neutral response to Chris's words. "You're here as well. So does this mean your company is also participating in the Sakura Group competition?" "Yes." "Well, a strong rival is troublesome," Chris said playfully before being called away by his contact. Lisa looked at me curiously as I relaxed. "Was that man from your previous company, John?" "Yes, he was a senior colleague." "I see. He seemed to rely on you quite a bit." "Probably." I realized my tone was a bit sharp and quickly fell silent. Lisa seemed to be trying to decipher my words, but I continued to evade the subject. The meeting with our client went well that day, and upon returning to the office, Lisa dove into preparations for the competition. Although she was my superior, she wasn't much older than me. Yet, she was entrusted with such significant responsibilities and strived to meet expectations. It was intriguing. Sure, a promotion would mean a higher salary and better evaluation. But she was already in a high position. I couldn't understand the benefit of her relentless efforts. Was it a strong sense of responsibility or simply enjoyment? Either way, her actions were beyond my understanding. I had often seen other employees swamped with work and deadlines, but Lisa already had everything: respect, wealth. What motivated her continued to puzzle me. Lisa?" I called out to Lisa, since she was still working past closing time. "What's up?" "It's past closing time." She looked around in surprise. It seemed she hadn't been keeping track of the time. I hadn't noticed. "Thank you. Are you heading home, John?" "Well, there's something I want to ask you." "Something to ask?" I hope it's not rude, but how can you put in so much effort? I mean, you don't have to be the one doing this competition. You have other work too. You'd still get promoted without doing all this, right? Well, Lisa pulled out the chair next to her. It seemed she wanted me to sit. When I did, she showed me her personal smartphone. It was filled with photos of a little girl and what appeared to be her parents. "This is me." "Really?" "My parents loved to travel and took me to many places." Indeed, the backgrounds of the photos varied greatly. Expansive landscapes, historical buildings, even some rare animals. I also traveled with relatives, and with friends when I was a student. And I still travel a lot now. All these memories are precious to me. They all look like wonderful memories. Yes, traveling is very enjoyable. So, I took this job to help people enjoy their trips even more than they expected. My hard work isn't just for promotion or recognition, it's to make travel more enjoyable for others. For that? Yes. Of course, having a higher position helps me to achieve my goals. It makes it easier to get approval for plans, right? Lisa smiled and showed me her partially completed materials. They prominently featured a beautiful sea and boats. Travel should be enjoyed. Just imagining people having a great time on my tours makes me happy. She spoke with sparkling eyes, showing no sign of fatigue. She took pride in her work. I, too. I also love traveling. I'm sure people will enjoy the tour you planned. Now that you mention it, and I'm feeling motivated. Lisa said, rolling up her sleeves and turning back to her computer. When I offered to help, she showed me the competition script written in English. I'm wondering how to convey my key points. Can I ask for your advice? Sure. I think this part could be softened. It might be clear to a Japanese audience. But it could be hard for people from other countries to understand. How about this? Should I change this part too? Yes, that makes sense. And so, we both lost track of time and ended up working late. For someone like me, who usually aimed to avoid overworking, this was the first time I had been so engrossed in a task. It's needless to say that Lisa had influenced me, and I realized I could broaden my perspective and look beyond my immediate tasks. Finally, the day of the competition arrived. We were the 5th out of 5 companies to present. Despite the ongoing tension, Lisa calmly waited for her turn, and even learned from the other presentations. Following her lead, I also paid attention to the presentations. When Lisa's turn came, she stepped up to the stage and placed her laptop on the desk. We waited for our company logo to appear on the white screen, but even after a minute, nothing happened. On stage, Lisa frantically typed on the keyboard. I apologize, please give us a moment. Our senior colleague, Emma, went to check on Lisa. Lisa, what's wrong? The laptop isn't working. It was fine just a moment ago. I'm trying to reboot it. It won't turn on. Can someone get the backup laptop? Holding Lisa's belongings, I rushed to bring the backup laptop to the stage. However, it wouldn't turn on either. We had already confirmed it was charged. It didn't seem to be a power issue. We should go back to the office and get another one. In my panic, I blurted out such a suggestion. Emma immediately dismissed it, knowing it was impossible to make it in time, but even the time spent on this exchange was precious. Lisa didn't have a printed copy of her script, it was all stored on her laptop. Even if she had printed it, presenting a tour without visuals on the screen wouldn't convey anything. Is everything okay? The host approached us with a worried look. Explaining that our laptop was malfunctioning, a man seated in the front row, likely a company executive, spoke up irritably. Enough already. If you're not prepared, step down. I apologize. Please give us a little more time. We don't have time for a company that can't even manage a proper presentation. There are 4 other companies here. Right, Mr. White? The man asked the foreigner sitting next to him. The foreigner seemed to understand Japanese, and placed his documents on the table with a frown. In that moment, I recalled Lisa's efforts over the past few months. Her passion for making people enjoy her tours. The countless hours she spent perfecting her plan. She had even gone on site to ensure every detail was accurate. She can't let it end like this. I entrusted the laptop to Emma and Lisa and stepped onto the stage. The attendees were chatting or looking at their smartphones. Ignoring them, I took a deep breath. Don't worry, I have memorized all of Lisa's script. Excuse me, it seems our laptop is nervous in front of all of you. But rest assured, I can speak better than the laptop. Please take a look at the first page of the handout. As I spoke, the man who had been irritated earlier looked up sharply. Mr. White and the other employees were also looking at me. They turned their attention to the handout as instructed. It seemed my English was understood correctly. Where would you like to go on a trip? Of course, to a fun place, right? When I continued in French, someone sitting at the edge couldn't help but speak up. You speak French? I responded in French. Yes, though it's very rudimentary. But how's that for some Japanese humility? Perfect. I'm glad. Maybe I should consider being a tour conductor as well. That would be great. The participants who didn't understand French looked puzzled. I apologized in English and then switched to the Chinese I had recently learned. I was just asking him to grade my French. It seems I passed. When my Chinese gets good enough, I'll be pitching to our Chinese clients next. The name tag of the person I made eye contact with indicated he was Chinese. As expected, he responded to my Chinese. I couldn't see Lisa and the others standing next to me, but employees from other companies, including Chris, were wide-eyed. Since I didn't speak Chinese back when I was at the previous company, Chris was likely surprised too. Alright, enough chit-chat, let's start the presentation. Switching back to English, I continued the presentation, interspersing it with occasional jokes to ease the tension of the participants. I visualized the slides and shared some fun facts about the tourist spots. Finishing right on time, I concluded my speech and bowed. The attendees gave a hearty round of applause, as if they had just witnessed a performance. I had conveyed everything necessary. Leaving the rest to Lisa, I stepped down from the stage. We would be informed of the competition results later, but as we were leaving, Mr. White personally approached me. "Your speech was very entertaining. I hope you can bring as much joy to the tours we arrange," he said in English, so I translated for the employees who didn't understand, and they jumped with excitement. After managing to succeed, we returned to the office, where Lisa called me to the meeting room. "John, I don't know how to thank you." She looked quite downcast. Despite being fully prepared, the laptop failure had been unexpected. It was only natural to feel frustrated. We're teammates, so it's only natural to cover for each other. I'm so useless. I talked big, but in the end, I had to rely on you. Both laptops malfunctioning was beyond our control. They still aren't working. Even after returning from the competition, both of Lisa's laptops remained unresponsive. We had handed them to the IT department to investigate the cause. I should have prepared the script and slides better. I feel like a rookie making such mistakes. Compared to that, your quick thinking was amazing. I didn't expect you to remember the script. We created it together, so to some extent. That wasn't all, you also used multiple languages so fluently. I didn't know you could speak French. Yes. I relied on you for this competition. I need to be able to handle things better on my own. Lisa gave a self-deprecating smile, and it felt off to me. Aren't you going to say, let's keep working together? What do you mean? I mean, not to boast, but if you utilize me well, we might win future competitions too. That wouldn't mean anything. Lisa stated firmly. How can I confidently offer tours if I don't win the competition on my own merits? It's only when it's my own achievement that I can truly be proud, Lisa said. Her words struck me like lightning. She was different from all the other colleagues and bosses I'd encountered. Actually, there are things I've been avoiding to tell. Like why you're so good with languages. Yes. Will you tell me? Yes. Since you're different from the others, Lisa. I began to explain that I had traveled around the world from a young age due to my parents' jobs. Most of the countries were English-speaking, so both Japanese and English were equally part of my life. When my parents' work settled down and we moved permanently to Japan, I was shocked. None of the kids my age could speak English fluently. They struggled with reading and writing. I couldn't understand why something so simple was so difficult for them, and I openly used English as naturally as I would in any other country. School textbooks felt like children's books to me. Naturally, my classmates relied on me. They asked for help with homework and study tips before tests. As a child, I enjoyed sharing my knowledge and happily helped them. Over time, I came to accept being used by others. It wasn't until college, during a group project in my French major, that I realized something was off. The group pushed all the responsibilities, leadership, creating materials, and even the presentation onto me. When I questioned why I had to do everything, they all said the same thing. Because John can speak English, they said. I thought English and French were different, but they didn't see it that way. They believed that anyone who could speak English was inherently good at all languages. Though it was a class to improve our language skills, they chose the easy way to get good grades. As a result, our achievements were shared equally among the team, and my contributions became others as well. I realized then that I was being used. Still, since it was just a student project and not very difficult, I thought it was more efficient for me to take charge. In that state, I got a job at a travel agency. By then, I had also learned French, so I was valued as a trilingual speaker of Japanese, English, and French. At first, I was genuinely happy to use my skills and be given a lot of work, but it didn't last long. It started about a year after I joined, with a work request from my direct senior, Chris. He asked me to write a proposal because he wasn't good at English, and since he had taken care of me since I joined, I gladly accepted. Chris was satisfied with the proposal and then asked me to help with another task. Helping him alongside my own work was tough and involved a lot of overtime. Still, the joy of seeing our project approved and actually turned into a product was incomparable, so I didn't complain and kept working. The situation worsened a year later, when I could finally look at the company as a whole. Chris got promoted to section chief, and I was still working under him. As I was being given more and more tasks, I decided to use past documents as reference materials. And I was stunned when I looked at the approved project proposals. The report for a project I had worked on about 90% by myself only had Chris's name on it. I had heard that his performance wasn't good before I joined. Unable to believe it, I checked other documents and proposals and found that my name was replaced by Chris's everywhere. Since Chris was the one submitting the final documents to our boss, he was indeed the project leader. However, all the ideas, research, and proposals were mine. Besides, Chris couldn't create the English documents. I decided to confront Chris and looked for him while he was away from his desk. I found him talking to our department head, Alex, in the smoking area. "Chris, the Paris tour you submitted this morning was great," Alex said. "The project Alex was talking about was also mine." "Yes, since I have a contact there, I could gather a lot of information," Chris replied. His words were exactly what I had said. That tour was created with input from my father's colleague, who helped me a lot as a child. "Excuse me." I couldn't hold back and stepped in front of them. Chris looked a bit flustered but quickly regained his composure. "John, what's up? Are you here for a smoke too?" "No, I have a question for Chris. The Paris tour project you were just discussing, that was my idea, right?" "Yes, John did help a lot." "Thanks for that." "Helped?" That's an understatement. It was far more than that. But Alex nodded in agreement with Chris's words. "Chris's guidance has been invaluable." "Is that so?" "Don't praise me too much, I'll get a big head," Chris said, smiling. I managed to interrupt their friendly exchange. "Not just that, but the Hokkaido tour last time, and the North America plan before that, those were my projects too." "That's not the right attitude." Alex suddenly reprimanded me. "Work isn't done alone. We achieve results by working together as a team. Trying to take all the credit isn't admirable." I was stunned by Alex's words. Did he say this without knowing anything? But Chris was promoted because of those successful projects. He is the manager, so he is being recognized for leading the team. Alex added that I should learn from Chris and not be so self-centered, and it made me speechless. No, I didn't want to say anything more. With supervisors like them, no matter how hard I worked, they would only use me for their benefit. My achievements would be absorbed into someone else's recognition. My distrust of those relying on my abilities and the evaluators reached its peak. And within less than a month, I quit that company. Fortunately, thanks to my language skills, I quickly found a new job. That's the company I'm with now. No one like them would steal my achievements in this company. Of course, I kept my language skills under wraps and didn't give my all to my work. If my efforts only serve to promote someone else, it's pointless to try hard. That's what I thought, but watching Lisa, I realized how rewarding it is to be recognized for my effort. Initially, I wanted to do work that made people happy. But somewhere along the line, I started caring only about recognition. Leaving that company was the right decision. Lisa said, a bit angrily. Of course, enjoying work is important, but if your efforts aren't properly recognized, it's natural to lose motivation. That Alex is a poor evaluator. But it's also my fault. If I had communicated better with them, things might not have turned out like that. Then, you can apply that reflection here. No one here will steal your credit, not while I'm around. What a reassuring statement. Honestly, I enjoyed preparing for this competition. Watching you work so hard was inspiring. I'm thrilled to hear that as your supervisor. John, you don't need to suppress your feelings anymore. Don't hold back, do what you want. Just then, Lisa's phone rang. Excuse me for a moment, she said, pulling her phone from her pocket. This is Lisa from Miami Tours. Yes. What? Really? I'll be there right away. After ending the call, Lisa grabbed my arm and hurried out of the conference room. What happened? They found the cause of the computer trouble. We need to get back to the competition venue. Was the problem at the venue? More like with the participants. What I heard on the way was shocking. It turned out that Chris was the one who caused Lisa's computer issues. After his presentation, he had placed a powerful magnet under the desk that damaged the equipment. He was caught by an employee from Sakura Group while trying to retrieve it. When Lisa and I arrived, the scene in the conference room had completely changed. There was Chris, looking dejected, with my former company's supervisor and members of the Sakura Group. An official approached us and explained the situation. Chris had been caught and confessed to sabotaging us. His supervisor was called in, the situation was explained again, and here we were. Lisa is here, the official said, leading us to Chris and the others. Is it true? It's John's fault. Gone was his meek demeanor, he pointed at me and yelled. Because he betrayed us and left the company, my efficiency dropped, our performance stagnated, and his departure caused us so much trouble. We would have won this competition if there weren't you. So you sabotaged John out of fear of his abilities, Lisa said, and her voice was filled with anger I had never heard before. Does trampling on others' efforts make you happy? Maybe you don't even care since you've done it so many times before. What do you even know about me? I know enough to see that you can't accomplish anything without John. You took credit for his work. Who is the real betrayer here? John worked under my direction. I didn't take credit. Isn't what you did proof enough? Lisa handed her business card to Chris's supervisor. This is who I am. I expect we will meet in court, so please keep this in mind. Court? What do you mean? It's obvious. Interfering with our business and damaging property, a lawsuit is the natural consequence. Her words were so reasonable that no one could argue back. Eventually, it led to a civil lawsuit. Chris was dismissed for violating multiple conduct codes. While the trial is ongoing, finding a new job is out of the question for him. Even after the trial, I doubt he will easily reintegrate into society. As expected, I heard through the grapevine that Chris is now living a meager life with considerable debt. On the other hand, Lisa's success in the competition and her previous achievements earned her a promotion. I was also recognized for my significant contributions and got promoted. Naturally, my language skills were revealed, and both of us were assigned to work overseas. Researching on site will be so much easier, Lisa said happily. Now, we are living together at our new posting. I have come to deeply respect Lisa, who changed my life so dramatically, and over time, I have developed feelings for her as a woman. She also said she was drawn to my dedication. I used to think that effort was pointless, but there are people who properly recognize it. I regret not opening up sooner and harboring prejudices, but I didn't have the courage. From now on, I'll trust people more and strive to fairly evaluate my subordinates. I'm sure things will go well at this company. What business does a middle school graduate have at a big company? You must be lost, so go home immediately. When I arrived at the client's company for the meeting, Kevin, a classmate from middle school, mocked me. In middle school, I did live a life that could be called the bottom rung, and I went straight to work without attending high school. Is being a middle school graduate really such a bad thing? I clenched my fists, trying to suppress the anger rising within me. It seems I'm really out of place here. Excuse me. With that, I quietly left the place. On the way back to my company, I called my secretary, Clark, on my phone. Cancel the ongoing deal. Pull everyone out. Are you serious? That's a $30 million deal. Yes, I'm serious. We'll sign with the other company, Stevens. Besides Kevin's company Sunlight, we had another potential company for this deal. And the discretion of which company to sign with was entrusted to me. My name is Tom. I'm 42 years old and work at a major air conditioning equipment company called Johnson. Currently, I'm having busy days as I approach a new contract. I want to finalize this deal quickly and disband the team as soon as possible. It's tough to work with people you don't get along with. It takes extra effort and the discussion often stalls due to disagreements. Regarding this contract, it shouldn't be that difficult in the first place. What complicates things is the presence of the sales manager, James. James is also 42 and has been the sales manager since last year. We've worked together several times since we were young, but we always clashed and never ended things on a good note. James had a stellar career and walked the elite path from the start. He graduated from a prestigious university in Tokyo and joined Johnson with great fanfare. He climbed the corporate ladder smoothly until I came along and disrupted things. Because we are the same age, we were seen as good rivals within the company. This didn't sit well with the proud James. I had worked at a subsidiary for a long time, and due to my achievements, I was brought into Johnson. From this experience, James completely looked down on me. However, since I started working at the same company, James has been having a rough time. James is not popular with women at all. He started balding at the crown in his 30s, and due to constant drinking at business meetings, his belly protrudes. Because of his appearance, he has no popularity among the female employees. On the other hand, I'm 6 feet tall, and I regularly work out at the gym, so I have a toned body. James was often compared to me in terms of appearance, which fueled his competitive spirit. He found out which gym I went to and immediately signed up. But having no habit of exercising for years, he became a member but never seemed to go. Therefore, he saw no results, and just walking a little made him sweat profusely and sit down, panting heavily. That's why he has no connections with women and is still single at 42. On the other hand, I got married at 30, and although we don't have children, I live happily with my beautiful wife. This time, I was to lead the team to finalize the contract, but there were significant problems with the client, which was causing me a headache. The other person causing me headaches was Kevin. Kevin was my classmate in both elementary and middle school, and I have no fond memories of him. I thought we had gone our separate ways for good and would never have to see each other again. But life has a funny way of bringing people back together. In middle school, we were rivals, always competing for the top spot in exams. We both had a strong desire not to lose, which drove us to study hard. I think that's when I learned the value of effort. If that period shaped who I am today, then maybe it wasn't so bad. But at the time, it was tough. I wanted a peaceful middle school life, but Kevin kept provoking me. From Kevin's perspective, he was supposed to always be number one, but my presence disrupted his plans. He must have held a grudge. Kevin had received elite education since before kindergarten. His mother, in particular, was very passionate about education and tried to get him into a prestigious private kindergarten. But Kevin failed the kindergarten entrance exam miserably. He couldn't hold it during the family interview and had to rush to the bathroom. Even now, his mother complains to the neighbors about Kevin's failure. Growing up with a mother who broadcasts such childhood failures to the neighborhood, how could a child develop properly? Kevin ended up attending a public kindergarten and failed again when trying to get into a prestigious private elementary school. By the time he was in middle school, his mother no longer pushed him to go to a famous school. This made Kevin feel more liberated, and his grades improved significantly. If I hadn't been his classmate, he would have easily been the top student, leaving a remarkable record. Even when he did come in first, people would ask, "What happened to the other guy this time?" To Kevin, I was nothing but an obstacle. After middle school, we went our separate ways, and I'm sure we both felt relieved. Kevin likely never expected to cross paths with me again, especially in his 40s. Given the importance of this deal to our company, I, as the team leader, had to go in person. The thought of meeting Kevin again after all these years was heavy on my mind. However, I thought maybe Kevin, having been through the trials of society, might have learned to consider others' feelings. If so, could we overcome our long-standing animosity and become friends? But that was just a fantasy. We were like the north and south poles of a magnet destined to repel each other. Kevin's company, Sunlight, is a major player in building management. It was impressive how he had steadily climbed the ranks. When our team from Johnson arrived at the Sunlight headquarters, we were shown to the meeting room. There stood Kevin, with stylishly groomed hair and a high-end suit. Kevin immediately recognized me. From the moment we exchanged business cards, he was disrespectful only towards me. As the meeting leader, Kevin introduced the Sunlight members but avoided eye contact with me. The Sunlight employees looked puzzled, unsure how to interact with me. Suddenly, Kevin spoke to me directly. "What are you doing here? Are you here to handle the machinery?" "Well, something like that," I replied, not wanting to provoke Kevin by revealing I was the team leader. Then, Kevin insulted me loudly enough for everyone in the meeting to hear. "What business does a middle school graduate have at a big company? You don't belong here, so leave immediately." In middle school, besides having good grades, I did live a life that could be called the bottom rung. And I went straight to work without attending high school. But is being a middle school graduate really such a bad thing? I clenched my fists, trying to suppress the anger rising within me. It seems I'm really out of place here. Excuse me. With that, I quietly left the place. On the way back to the company, I called my secretary, Clark, on my phone. Cancel the ongoing deal. Pull everyone out. Are you serious? That's a $30 million deal. Yes, I'm serious. We'll sign with the other company, Stevens. Besides Kevin's company Sunlight, we had another potential company for this deal. And the discretion of which company to sign with was entrusted to me. After hanging up, I put my phone in my chest pocket and looked out the car window. I now have a personal driver, and I can sit in the spacious back seat of a luxury car, spending my travel time in comfort. However, it took a lot of effort to get where I am today. I grew up without a father from a young age, raised by my mother and grandmother. According to my grandmother, my father ran off with another woman. Since then, my mother worked hard outside while my grandmother took care of the house and looked after me. I got used to not having a father around, but you never really get used to being poor. Moreover, once you start school, the difference in wealth becomes apparent through your belongings. Kevin's family was wealthy, and everything he owned was top-notch. As for me, I lived on hand-me-downs from neighbors. Though I was often praised for my good grades at school, outside of that, my poverty stood out and made me feel miserable. And in middle school, the countdown began for the inevitable fate of entering the workforce with just a middle school education. It was far from an enjoyable 3 years. After graduating middle school with no changes in my circumstances, Kevin and I went our separate ways. I joined a subsidiary of Johnson thanks to a connection my homeroom teacher had. The president of that subsidiary, Mr. Williams, had also struggled and started the company with just a middle school education. Seeing Mr. Williams gave me hope. Mr. Williams suggested I work while attending night school, allowing me to continue my education. With the support and understanding of my co-workers, who kindly covered my night shifts, I never missed a class. Despite others dropping out, I graduated high school with perfect attendance and entered a night university. I studied architecture in college, which directly benefits my current job. Thus, my credentials changed from middle school graduate to university graduate. It was all thanks to the help and cooperation of my colleagues. I vowed to repay this company for the rest of my life. After various events, I moved to the parent company Johnson following Mr. Williams's retirement. I now hold the position of director of the business department at Johnson headquarters. Next year, I am set to be promoted to an executive role. As director, I decided to switch the business partner from Sunlight to Stevens. Other employees returned from Sunlight headquarters, looking puzzled. "Tom, what's going on? We worked so hard on this deal, and now it's canceled at the last minute. Sorry for the sudden change." The person in charge over there didn't like the idea of me leading the negotiations. "It could cause problems for your work later on. Now that you mention it, Kevin did say something arrogant when he saw you. He talked with James after you left. I knew James had been working hard to secure this deal with Sunlight. I'll have to explain later that my decision wasn't out of spite towards James. If we signed with Sunlight, I'd have to see Kevin frequently. It's not just about me feeling uncomfortable, I expected it would negatively affect my employees. If Kevin looked down on me, the director, he would treat the other employees as inferior. Knowing Kevin's personality from childhood, I could predict his behavior. I have to protect the employees who work hard with me. In fact, everyone who heard Kevin's insults was furious. That Kevin guy called you a middle school graduate at the bottom. Tom, you have an exemplary career. Graduating from university while contributing to the company. I've interacted with Kevin twice leading up to this deal, and he was just awful. Right after we exchanged business cards, he asked about my alma mater. When he realized my rank was lower, he immediately looked down on me. On the other hand, Paul from Stevens is wonderful. I've been negotiating with Stevens, and he has a personality that makes you want to work with him. Even when Sunlight was chosen, he didn't show any resentment. No one criticized my decision to switch partners at the last minute. The only one who might still be grumbling would be James, who was still talking with Kevin at Sunlight headquarters. As I was discussing this with my team, my secretary Clark entered the room. Kevin from Sunlight is here to see you. Will you meet him? I had no time to hesitate, as Kevin forcefully entered right behind Clark. Kevin, looking very distressed, approached me quickly and bowed deeply. I apologize. I had no idea you were in charge of this deal. James told me about your struggles and how you graduated from university. It's an inspiring story. You may have only known me as a middle school graduate, but whether or not I am the negotiator, those comments were unacceptable. I cannot work with someone who places such importance on academic background. As I firmly rejected him, Kevin trembled and looked up at me with pleading eyes. We used to be the same height in middle school, but I grew significantly taller afterward. Now Kevin had to look up at me. I wondered how he felt about the person he once looked down on now being taller and higher in social status. Please, don't say that. This contract is crucial for our company. I'm responsible for it, and if it falls through, I won't know what to tell my superiors. That's not my concern. You aren't happy to see me again, are you? It's better for both of us if we don't interact anymore. Please, I beg you. Reconsider. Gone was his earlier arrogance, replaced by a pale face and repeated bows. He must hate bowing to someone like me. This must be the sad reality of being a corporate employee. At this moment, I was completely victorious. Kevin finally got on his knees, begging for forgiveness. I realize now how I've made you uncomfortable since middle school. If this deal falls through, I'm in big trouble. I apologize for everything in the past, so please forgive me. As Kevin groveled on the floor, Clark entered and announced, "The representatives from Stevens have arrived." I left Kevin there and went to meet the Stevens team. Kevin lingered for a while but eventually gave up and left. The deal with Stevens went smoothly, thanks to the groundwork laid by our team. With the new contract, James, who had been working on the Sunlight deal, found himself isolated. James was furious with my decision. We worked so hard to advance this deal, and now you're canceling it last minute. What was all my effort for? I truly apologize for that. This decision wasn't out of spite. You know my history with Kevin, but this isn't about old grudges. I felt genuinely sorry for James, who had been handling the negotiations. While I couldn't work with Kevin, James and I are colleagues. I hope to move forward without causing further conflict. I sincerely bowed to James. James seemed to misinterpret my humble gesture. Suddenly, he puffed up his chest and pointed his finger at me. Do you think bowing is enough? Your forehead hasn't touched the floor. If you're really sorry, bow until your head scrapes the floor. Employees nearby looked on in shock. James, as the sales manager, was below me in rank. Demanding such excessive apology from his superior was problematic. At that moment, I heard the sound of high heels in the hallway. At the familiar sound, I lifted my head and looked toward the entrance of the room. My wife, Mia, appeared shortly after. Usually, she would greet me with a sweet smile, but she had clearly overheard our exchange and was furious. She stormed into the room, directing her anger at James. James, startled by Mia's fierce expression, took a step back. Mia stood close to me and admonished James. Who do you think you are to demand my husband bow to you? You're just a sales manager. Mia is still head over heels for me, and we have an excellent relationship. Raised as the only daughter of the current president, Mr. Johnson, Mia never had any financial difficulties. She studied abroad in America during high school and went on to a prestigious women's university in Tokyo. After graduating from university, she worked in an office in the city for a while, but returned home at Mr. Johnson's request. Mr. Johnson intended for Mia to marry a man holding a significant position in the company. However, Mia, despite her straightforward personality, wanted to live her life according to her own will, not just following her father's wishes. She was willing to consider her father's opinion on her marriage partner, but she ultimately wanted to make her own choice. Mia first dated James. At that time, both were in their 20s, and James didn't have a protruding belly or a bald head yet. I once asked her out of curiosity, "What did you see in James?" Well, back then, his lack of good looks made me feel secure. I didn't have to worry about anyone else taking him. But as I started hearing bad things about him at work, my feelings cooled. As they continued dating, Mia began to feel uncomfortable with James's arrogant attitude and baseless confidence. Eventually, their relationship was full of arguments, and they grew apart. During this time, Mia happened to visit the head office and saw me walking down the hallway. She fell in love at first sight. She quickly started gathering information about me and, reassured by my good reputation and work ethic, approached me. When Mia first invited me to lunch, I was so surprised I thought it was a prank. We had a casual conversation, but Mia was captivated by my personality. Mia officially broke up with James and started dating me. She took the lead in our relationship, and we got married when I was 30. Mia, who respects and loves me wholeheartedly, is truly my goddess of destiny. After marrying Mia, I quickly surpassed James in my career. From James's perspective, I had taken Mia, who was within his grasp, and he might have felt I also took his career and personal life. As the world watched, James and Kevin, both closely connected to me, faced consecutive misfortunes. Their downfall contrasted with my rising success. Amidst this, a huge issue emerged between the two of them. Kevin had bribed James to secure a contract with Johnson. Both Johnson and Sunlight launched thorough investigations. Eventually, the investigators from both companies uncovered the deep-seated relationship between James and Kevin. It was revealed that they frequented a hidden bar together and leaked internal information about each other's companies. Kevin was the first to be exposed, having misappropriated company funds, and was immediately fired once the investigation concluded. James, who was on house arrest, was found to have used the bribe money from Kevin for his affair. James was single, but his affair was with a subordinate's wife from the sales department. The subordinate eventually divorced and kicked out his unfaithful wife. The wife tried to move in with James but was rejected, leading her to retaliate. She threatened to expose various things she had learned about James during their relationship, causing another uproar. Blaming James for the failure of her marriage, she even threatened to sue him. At this point, the company could no longer protect James, and he was forced into early retirement. My father-in-law, Mr. Johnson, was deeply shocked by James's betrayal. Especially since James had once dated his daughter and was seriously considered for marriage. Now, he was relieved that Mia didn't marry James. As James's misconduct was revealed, my father-in-law's regard for me soared. "Tom, I'm so glad I entrusted my daughter to you. James had a great education and decent sales performance, but he almost fooled me completely. All I could do was give a wry smile." Compared to Kevin in middle school and James as a working adult. Neither was pleasant, but in the end, I emerged victorious. Not feeling competitive or resentful about the comparisons led to good results. James sought help from Kevin, wanting a return on all the favors he'd done. But with Kevin also fired, he couldn't take care of James. In the end, James forced his way into Kevin's house, leading Kevin's wife to call 911, making it a police matter. The police officer who heard the story advised him, and he went home quietly that day. However, worried that he might come back, his wife and children moved to a weekly apartment. This naturally led to a state of separation. The new fiscal year began, and my position changed. I was promoted from director to executive vice president. The responsibility was greater, but I was motivated and excited for the future. The fact that someone like me, who had struggled so much, became an executive greatly boosted the morale of the employees. I didn't want to just sit in the executive's chair, I wanted to be an active leader who always considered the feelings of my subordinates. Amidst my busy days, I couldn't help but wonder what had happened to Kevin and James since then. Other employees seemed to feel the same, as rumors about their fates spread. First, Kevin. Since being fired from Sunlight, he has yet to find a new job. Kevin had a wife and children, but they left him around the same time he lost his job. Kevin, who desperately wants to repair the relationship, and his wife, who wishes to separate. Kevin, desperate to repair the relationship, visited his wife daily, pleading for her to return, but it seemed divorce was imminent. His loneliness led him to drink more, and he was often seen wandering the neighborhood drunk. James's situation was equally grim. Fortunately or unfortunately, being single meant he had no wife or children to leave. However, his affair ended abruptly. Even for the woman he was having an affair with, staying with her current husband was more secure than moving in with the jobless James. Her husband, wanting to ensure she and James wouldn't physically meet again, requested a transfer to a regional office. She decided to go with her husband, and they were working on mending their relationship. Left alone again, James struggled to find new employment. Having been single for a long time, James had substantial savings, which he decided to invest. Unfortunately, he lost a significant amount of money in high-risk investments. He depleted all his savings meant for future living expenses. James's future looked very bleak. A year has passed since I became executive vice president. My relationship with my wife remains as strong as ever. We didn't have children, but we focused on cherishing our life together. To keep the spark alive, we had weekly dates at upscale restaurants. One evening, while dining at a restaurant with a beautiful night view, Mia made a surprising confession. She was pregnant with twins. At 38, a pregnancy was concerning, but Mia was determined to safely deliver the twins. I was fully committed to supporting her through the pregnancy and beyond. We cherished our daily lives, enjoying the happiness of an expanding family. There were many eyes looking at me with worried expressions. Everyone was reaching out to me, but I didn't know whose hand to take. I finally collapsed to my knees and sat down on the spot. Then, I woke up. It's been a while since I had that dream. I pulled my sweat-soaked t-shirt away from my skin and got up. I got out of bed and stared at the wall. There were several certificates with my name Hugo Reed written on them. A gold award for a book report I wrote in elementary school. In middle school, I consistently achieved good results in the kendo club. Until I was 15 and my sister was born, I worked really hard. Bringing home these solemn pieces of paper made my parents jump for joy. It doesn't matter if I take these with me. I reached out to the framed certificates on the wall. Suddenly, my bedroom door swung open with a bang. Hugo, if you don't get up soon. Oh, you're already awake. How many times do I have to tell you to knock before you come in? It's your fault for not locking the door. My sister, Lily, saluted and smiled brightly like the sun. It's rare for you to wake up before me, Lily. What are you talking about? I'm 12 now. I've never been late since I became a senior in elementary school. Such a cheeky kid. Who do you think walked you to school every day when you missed the group walk? I sighed exaggeratedly, and Lily shrugged and laughed. It's a typical peaceful and happy weekend morning. Anyone would see it that way. But between me and Lily, there's an invisible wall. A thick, high wall. Your room is still messy. Will you be ready in time? How long until the move? Lily asked as she went down the stairs. I couldn't see the expression on her face as she talked to me. Less than 3 weeks. So you need to make sure you can get up by yourself. You're so persistent. Aren't you going to be lonely without me? I was at a loss for words. Sometimes I didn't know what to say in these everyday conversations. If I said I'd be lonely, Lily would be happy. But if I actually said it out loud, it would be a lie. Honestly, I wanted to say that a weight would finally be lifted off my shoulders. Because I've always felt that I didn't belong in this house. Lily must have found my silence strange. Before entering the living room, she turned to look at me. I smiled to cover it up, and Lily gave a vague smile in return. Mom, Hugo is already up. Mom, who was in the kitchen, turned around. Good morning, Hugo. I raised a hand to greet her, matching her smile, which was similar to Lily's. I didn't look like Mom, Dad, or Lily. Of course, that's only natural. In the summer when I was 8 and lost my parents. It was my adoptive mom and dad, people whose faces and names I didn't even know until that day, who reached out to me. Until 19 years ago, I was Hugo Smith. The person who took me in when I lost my home and family was Alice Reed, who was now serving me breakfast. She is my current mom. I'd like the flowers on each table to be white and orange, but do you think 2 colors might be too plain? Emily spread out the venue layout on the table and looked intently at the planner, Jessica. It depends on the number of flowers. Do you have any preferences, sir? I'm fine with whatever. Emily gently touched my arm as I answered, looking down. I'm the one who wants the wedding. Hugo is just accompanying me, so I'm grateful he even shows up for the meeting. Emily tilted her head and smiled, and I murmured sorry with just my mouth. In a month, Emily and I will be married. A week before we register our marriage, we'd moved into the house we chose together, and 6 months later, we'd have the wedding. There are 6 tables planned for the venue. Emily probably arranged it considering that I have no relatives to invite. At our first meeting, Emily had said, "It's good as long as we can invite our close family and friends." I'll create a sample image of the flowers for the next meeting. Thank you. Now, let's move on to the next topic. Jessica put away the layout. The next document she pulled out was the schedule for the day. I drank some iced tea to soothe my dry throat. Whether she knew my resolve or not, Emily squeezed my arm a bit tighter. You mentioned having a non-religious ceremony. As confirmed in our last meeting, are you fine with the typical flow? Yes. We're working on our vows now, so they should be ready by the next meeting. Emily glanced at me. I nodded lightly and scratched my nose. Jessica shrugged, I'm glad. I was a bit worried because it seemed like you weren't involved at all. And this is such an important day for you both. Emily's expression softened. The tension that had been scattered across her face began to ease. Next, I'd like to fill in the timeline for the reception. I understand that your college friends will be giving the toasts. Yes, they've agreed to do it. While Emily and Jessica continued the discussion, I put an ice cube from my empty glass into my mouth. I understood. I knew my lack of enthusiasm about the wedding was making Emily anxious. But imagining how the Reed family, who weren't my real family, would feel at my wedding made me hesitant. I'm relying on Emily's understanding of my feelings. After the letter to your parents, we'll have the speeches from both families. Is that okay? My family is fine with that, but Hugo, what about you? As we neared the end of confirming the reception flow, Emily put her finger to her chin, thinking. Then she looked at me seriously. What do you mean? I have no issue with you reading a letter to your parents. Hugo, do you have anything you want to say to your parents? Emily's round eyes wavered slightly. Wait a minute, it's common for the bride to read a letter to her parents at the reception, but I've never heard of the groom doing the same. I looked to Jessica for support, and she gave a troubled look. Indeed, it's not common. The groom usually gives the final speech. But it's not unheard of, right? Emily's usually soft voice became firm. Her hands, clasped on her skirt, trembled with tension. There are cases where it's requested. Both Emily and Jessica looked at me. It seemed the final decision was up to me. Just as I was about to shake my head, Emily's small hand wrapped around mine. Her warmth spread through me. Let me think about it, I said, signaling the end of today's meeting. I was adopted by the Reed family 19 years ago, the summer I turned 8. That January, I had lost my parents in a car accident. At that age, I didn't fully understand what it meant to lose them. I missed the moment to feel sad about their sudden departure. I understood the meaning, but I couldn't grasp the sadness or the pain. It was about a week after I started living with my paternal uncle, who was the first to take me in. I was given a room there. On the first night I slept alone, I finally cried. I thought I had muffled my sobs with the blanket, but being only 8, I wasn't very successful. I remember the warmth of my uncle's hand patting my back as he came into the room, alerted by my crying. Even if the hole left by my parents couldn't be filled, I decided to live on in that house. I never imagined my uncle had different plans. After the 49-day mourning period, he called me to his room, holding a plaque with my parents' names, Michael Smith and Grace Smith. And he bowed deeply to me, touching his hands and forehead to the tatami, saying, "Hugo, I'm so sorry." He performed a formal apology, the kind that showed deep remorse. After that, I was passed from one relative's house to another. In 3 months, I stayed with 5 different relatives: paternal uncle, aunt, grandparents, maternal uncle, and grandparents. They all said they couldn't handle the sorrow I carried. Not understanding their words, I felt lost. Then a woman from the child welfare office came and presented me with 2 options. I could go to a children's home or be adopted by the Reed family, who had expressed interest in taking me in. Honestly, I was scared. Scared of hoping and then being rejected again. I was about to choose the children's home when my paternal uncle, who had been listening by my side, patted my back. "Let's meet the Reeds first," he said. My uncle had always been on my side. Even when I was being scolded by my parents as a child, he would pat my head and say, "That's enough," giving me a warm smile like winter sunlight. Even on the night he first rejected me, he had cried and apologized repeatedly. My uncle was a kind person. He must have deeply regretted not being able to take me in. Understanding his feelings, I agreed to visit the Reeds. After that, everything happened quickly. The Reeds, my current parents, had no issues with income or home environment. Strangely, I didn't feel any walls between us. I first met them in the spring. After several meetings, by the end of summer, I decided to become their adopted son. In the car on the way back, I could hear Emily sniffle as she listened to my story. The Reeds wanted me because they couldn't have children. But now, they have Lily. Since she was born 12 years ago. I haven't felt I belonged in that house. When I leave, I plan to cut ties with them. I bet they'd rather not attend the wedding. So I don't want to cause any unnecessary trouble. Emily, sniffling one last time, pouted and said, "I don't believe your parents think that way." I knew that. The Reeds had treated me the same as Lily. They scolded me when I did something wrong, celebrated my efforts, whether successful or not. Every morning, they greeted me with warm smiles, and at night, they comforted me with a calmness like the winter night sky. But I've always been scared. The uncertain relationship where I never knew when they might disappear again, or when they might bow and apologize. In the now quiet car, I glanced at Emily's expression. She had her finger on her chin, thinking about something again. "Mom, here," I said. On a Sunday, just a week before the move. I came downstairs to the living room, holding a framed picture. In the well-lit living room, there's no need to turn on the lights on sunny days. Bathed in sunlight, my mom was hunched over at the table. "What are you looking at?" "You'll hurt your eyes if you get too close," I said. Peering over her shoulder, I saw several albums spread out in front of her. "These are old albums. The photos have faded, so I have to squint to see them," she replied. "Yeah, they're really faded. Maybe it's more about how they were stored than their age." "Did you keep them in a sunny place?" I sat down next to her and looked at the photos. In the pictures, there was a young woman who must have been my mom, with a baby between her. Next to them, a woman who looked a lot like my mom was smiling from a hospital bed. "This is you, right, Mom?" "Yes, that's me." "The one in bed is my sister," she said. "And the baby you're holding is her child?" Mom nodded slowly but shallowly. She smiled, but frowning at the same time. She rubbed the wrinkles on her forehead with her wrinkled fingers. It wasn't just nostalgia, she looked sad, almost regretful. "Yes, that's my sister's child." "So, he would be your cousin," she said. "Then he's Lily's cousin too." "I've never heard about him before." "There was no need to talk about it," she replied. Contrary to her cold words, her voice was warmer and more emotional than usual. I closed my mouth, stopping myself from asking why. Her unchanged expression since earlier kept me silent. Sounds from outside drifted into the living room. It's a Sunday afternoon, so there were children's playful voices, cars passing by, and household noises from nearby houses. All these sounds helped fill the silence between me and my mom. "She seems like a kind person," I said, forcing the words out. Mom's eyes widened. "Your sister, she seems kind and warm." "I wish I could have met her," I said. Mom replied in a trembling voice, "Yes, I wish I could see her too," and closed the album. Even without her saying it explicitly, I understood. Mom would never be able to see her sister or this nephew again. Being told she couldn't have children and then losing contact with her nephew must have been devastating. It wasn't surprising that 19 years ago, my mom wished for adoption. If she could have still seen her nephew, she might not have needed me. I silently bowed my head to my mom's nephew in the album, whose name I didn't even know. I sent Mom a message, "Sorry for the sudden notice. I might be late, so please leave dinner out for me," and put my phone back in my pocket. I looked back at Emily, who was watching me. "I got it," I said. At noon, I had sent Emily a message about the album I saw with Mom yesterday. Emily had quickly replied, "Get your family register and meet me at our usual cafe after work," but she didn't reply to any of my subsequent messages. She only marked them as read after work. I rushed to the government office before it closed and managed to get a copy of my family register. I couldn't read Emily's true intentions or purpose. Emily, my classmate since high school, understood my loneliness and anxiety, as well as my parents' feelings. And she always supported and guided me. She never delved deeply into my background. She quietly absorbed the bits of information I gradually shared. This was the first time Emily touched upon my origins. I thought she might be anxious about my circumstances. But as soon as I entered the cafe, I realized I was wrong. Emily was already seated, waiting for me with her usual calm expression. She pushed her cup of cafe latte aside. I slid the family register I had just obtained across the table. "Did you look at it, Hugo?" she asked in her clear voice. I shook my head. My family register is complicated and detailed. There's no point in me checking it now. "Why did you want to see it, Emily?" "I was just curious about your mother's reaction." "My mom's reaction?" "Let's just take a look," Emily insisted. At her urging, we both lowered our gaze to the document. Of course, it started with my name. No way. This can't be. While my trembling hand covered my lips, Emily exhaled deeply, seemingly reassured and convinced of her thoughts. "Maybe this person is the sister your mom was talking about." Emily's slender finger pointed to the section with my biological parents' names. Under mother in the persons recorded in the family register section. It read Lisa Reed. "So, the Smiths adopted you first," Emily continued, moving her finger down. In the adoptive parents section, it listed Michael Smith and Grace Smith. The names of the parents I thought were my biological ones. "You were adopted by the Smiths before you even turned 1, Emily said. "Nobody ever told me." "They probably intended to tell you when you were older, but never got the chance." I recalled the words of the Smith relatives. They said they couldn't empathize with my sorrow. My uncle, my grandparents, they all said the same thing. It wasn't just the grief of losing my parents. Maybe they meant they couldn't bear the sorrow I would feel upon learning this truth. I had to be told that those two were not my real parents. Was my uncle trying to say that he couldn't bear the responsibility and burden of doing so? Just as my head felt like it might explode from confusion, Emily placed her hand over mine. "I'm going to turn the page," she said quietly. The next entry was the dissolution of my adoption with the Smiths. I remember hearing about this when I was going to the Reeds. They said it was for a special adoption. But it wasn't exactly that. Below the record of the dissolution with the Smiths, there was another adoption record. It listed David Reed and Alice Reed, my current parents. "Let me process this for a moment," I said, taking a gulp of coffee to moisten my dry mouth. Emily had been waiting for me for quite a while. The other customers had completely changed during that time. Emily had even refilled her cafe latte twice. "Okay," I said. With my single word, Emily lifted her head. "I am the child of Lisa Reed, my mother's sister, and I was adopted by the Smith family soon after I was born. For some reason, I was supposed to grow up with them. But after losing the Smith parents and having nowhere to go, Mom, the Reed family took me in." Emily, who had been nodding repeatedly as she listened to my story, finally spoke. "They told you it was a special adoption because you believed the Smiths were your real parents. They had to explain the separation. So they called it a special adoption." But actually, you were a regular adoptee with the Smiths, and it was just a regular dissolution. I nodded slightly in agreement with Emily's understanding. Emily's third cup of cafe latte was also empty. My iced coffee glass was left with only ice. I understand, but it's hard to accept, I said, looking down. Suddenly, a white handkerchief slid into my view. Hugo, you liar. Emily's voice was soft. When I looked up, I knew Emily would be smiling gently. I cried like a child. I felt as if my tears would soak the handkerchief she handed me. The first thing that came to mind was the faces of the Smith parents. My memories were hazy, but until today, I had never doubted that they were my real parents. On the days they scolded me, the days they rejoiced because of me, they held me in their arms. After starting elementary school, I once got into a fight with a classmate. It was a trivial matter and didn't become a big deal. But my parents listened to my vent for a long time. Usually, I had to be in bed by 9, but that day, they stayed up past midnight, nodding at my words until I started to doze off. They never denied my thoughts, nor did they reject the others. In the end, my father said, "It's a miracle to fully understand everyone. But even with those you can't fully understand, you can still shake hands. Knowing this now will make you a strong and kind person, Hugo," and he hugged me again. My uncle and grandparents, even though they couldn't live with me, loved me dearly. They always visited me on my birthday and Christmas. After I went to the Reed family, I must have been quite unstable. I tried to be a good kid, focusing only on getting good grades at school. But my new father invited me to play catch. I remember my new mom sitting on a bench with a lunchbox. At first, the catch was silent, but as the sun set and my arm started to ache. It happened. My father suddenly called my name, Hugo, and threw the ball. "What?" I said as I threw the ball back. He caught the ball, paused for a moment, and then looked up at me. "Hugo, thank you for being in this world," he said. And his throw landed perfectly in my glove. "Thank you. I'm happy to be your father." "I'm the happiest man in the world," he said multiple times. Why did I forget that? Even after Lily was born, my father always looked at me with the same eyes as on that day. Why did I keep doubting their love? As my tears dried up, I noticed Emily had moved to the seat next to me. "Hugo, go and ask," she said. Not understanding her intention, I looked at Emily with my probably red eyes. "Don't you want to ask why you went to the Smiths in the first place? Let's leave after you get your answers." Emily squeezed my hand. We looked at each other for a while. Then, I nodded slightly. "Hugo, is this all your stuff?" Lily, in her jersey, pointed to the last cardboard box left in the room. 6 days had passed since I learned about my birth. Today, I am leaving home. In the end, I couldn't ask my parents anything. "It's sad that you won't be able to play with your cute little sister anymore once you leave." I prioritized spending time with Lily, who kept saying things like that. "But it's no even an excuse. You didn't tell me it would be this hard." I wasted my whole day off. "I should get paid for this," Lily complained, pouting. "You said you wanted to experience moving, didn't you?" I replied, handing her a sports drink. Even after gulping down half the bottle with a satisfying sound like in a commercial, Lily's face didn't brighten up. "Fine, what do you want?" "Just so you know, no money. School rules prohibit part-time jobs," I said. Lily laughed. "You're so serious, Hugo," then gave me a mature look I had never seen before. "Talk to Mom properly," she said. Lily took another sip of her drink. "What should I talk about?" I asked, my voice tense. I didn't know how much Lily knew. I couldn't say anything reckless. "I don't know, but Mom hasn't been herself. And ever since you decided to leave, you've been acting strange too. Dinner used to be fun with the 4 of us, but now it's not," Lily said, covering her face with the towel draped over her shoulder. And, despite her trembling voice, she kept telling me, "Talk to Mom. I love Mom, Dad, and you, Hugo. I don't want you to leave with things being bad between us," she said. Her weak fists hit my arm repeatedly. Again and again, she expressed her feelings. "I'm sorry, I'm a terrible brother," I said. Lily had grown up. 12 years ago, she could fit in my arms, but now she reached up to my chest. her hands, her back, and her heart. While I stood still, Lily had been growing. I felt a sting in my nose. I was happy and sad about her growth. "Thank you," I said. When Lily lifted her head, she smiled cheekily. "You better be really grateful." In the now empty room, I faced my mom alone. Lily had gone out with Dad to buy lunch. She was being considerate in her own way. "Sitting on your knees like that on the floor, doesn't it hurt?" Mom's smile had a shadow. She had the same expression as when she was looking at the album that day. I took the folded family register out of my pocket. I unfolded it and placed it on the floor between us. "Yes, I thought it was about time you found out," Mom said without any surprise or lament. She took a deep breath and began to speak, as if resigning herself. "Hugo, as it's written there, you are my nephew." Seeing me nod firmly, she nodded once as well. It felt like we were confirming our feelings, like a mutual understanding. Even after knowing and speaking the truth, nothing would change. It was a moment of confirming our resolve and trust in each other. "Your real mother, my sister Lisa Reed, died shortly after giving birth to you. She was always frail. When we learned she was pregnant with you at 18, the whole family opposed the idea." "Even you, Mom?" I asked. "When I was 13 at the time, I loved my sister very much, but that's no even an excuse." I wasn't shocked by what I heard. If I had heard this when I was 15, holding Lily for the first time, I might have sunk into deep sadness. Mom moved a bit closer to me and continued speaking, "But," she said, "my sister, who wanted to have a child with the person she loved, disappeared almost like a runaway, but she sent me a letter. When I rushed to the hospital and saw you just born, I felt foolish for opposing her." I thought so from the bottom of my heart. Mom's voice and hands began to tremble. "My sister only told me that the man who was your father was no longer around at that time. So, I don't know anything about your father." "I'm sorry. If I found out, I'd be angry," I said jokingly. Mom shrugged and replied, "If only anger was all it would take. When my sister passed away, I was just a child and couldn't do anything. I felt countless times how powerless I was, seeing you in the Smiths' arms. So, when I became an adult, I got a job and married, ready to welcome you anytime. Of course, it was best if you could stay happy with the family who adopted you." "The Smith family loved me," I said. "Yes, I felt that as soon as I saw you with them. That's why both your dad and I grew to love you even more," Mom said. Not fully understanding her words, I tilted my head. Seeing my confusion, Mom gave me a gentle smile. "At first, I wanted to protect you because my sister cherished you more than her own life. It felt like a duty. Or maybe my love for my sister was stronger. But after reuniting with you and seeing you surrounded by so much love, I wanted you to feel that you belong with us." I felt tears streaming down my cheeks. "Your dad said that you had been loved by so many but still felt insecure. What you needed was a place where you belong," Mom said as she wiped my tears. "Congratulations on your wedding," she said, her voice shaking uncontrollably. "Thank you for everything," I said, curling up and holding the family register close to my chest. Thinking of all the people who had supported and loved me. My hair felt heavy with wax and spray. Formal attire felt incredibly restrictive, and I lost count of how many deep breaths I had taken today. Next to me, Emily, dressed in an orange gown, gave me a thumbs up. Now, a letter from the groom to his family. The female MC announced solemnly to the venue. I stood up slowly and walked to the stand microphone. After clearing my throat, I faced forward. I turned towards the table where Dad, Mom, and Lily were seated. It might be unusual to hear a groom's letter, but I have people I must express my gratitude to. "May I have your time and attention?" I asked. The audience responded with applause. I took an envelope from my inner pocket. I pulled out a single sheet of stationery from the envelope. On that single sheet, I had written the names Lisa Reed, Michael Smith, Grace Smith, David Reed, and Alice Reed. "I have 3 mothers and 2 fathers," I said. The audience murmured briefly but then quieted down. Emily's parents nodded with calm expressions. I was glad I had told them on the day we registered our marriage. Lily wasn't surprised or crying. She watched with a serious expression, waiting for the rest of my letter. When people hear just this part, they often say, "It must have been tough," or "You went through a lot." But I never found it tough or difficult. There were some lonely nights, but looking back, I feel I spent every day in a warm and loving home, I continued. I held up the sheet of stationery. There were gasps from the audience. The stationery only had the names of my 5 parents. I had told Emily that I wanted to speak from my heart rather than read a prepared speech. She had agreed without hesitation, saying, "That's so like you, Hugo," with a smile. "I am here today because of the love of everyone. I am the happiest person in the world. Please let me express my heartfelt gratitude to my 5 parents who brought me into this world and raised me." I walked over to the Reed family's table. I made eye contact with Dad, Mom, and Lily in turn. "Thank you for being my family. Thank you for all you've done, and I look forward to our future together." Applause erupted from the audience. Amid the unending cheers, Dad and Mom hugged me. I looked up to the heavens and, with a clear voice, said, "Thank you," to my other 3 parents as well,